everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. So today we are here to talk about the news that Big Papa Kwame Kilpatrick may have received clemency in his case. You guys know that Kwame, who was the mayor of Detroit, was sentenced to 28 years in prison, and I believe he served like 7 years. But he had requested release, like so many other people with the COVID-19 going around, and he had been denied. And what's so interesting about this is that I had been thinking about the Home for the Holidays. Pastor Jamal Bryant had did this big release back in December saying that he was partnering with Ebony Magazine, and they were creating this foundation to help get people to pay bail for people who can't get out of jail because they don't have, they're being detained pre-trial because they don't have the money to get out of prison. And so I just happened to be looking to see like what's going on with that, because Jamal never said anything else about it. He did the call back in December for the Home for the Holidays, and then he said that it was going to be a year-long endeavor where New Birth was partnering with Ebony, and they were going to try and get oh my God, I can't even remember the number of people. It was like in the thousands of people they were going to try and make bail for, so that these people could come home and await trial from home. But anyway, Ebony Foundation made a petition for Kwame Kilpatrick back in February, asking for clemency for him. And so I'm going to read that letter to you guys. And let's see, let me get back up here. The letter that they wrote on February 25th, 2020, and it was written to Donald Trump. And it says, Dear President Trump, for 75 years, Ebony and Jet has been a trusted brand in the African American community. Our vision over the years has been to highlight the great accomplishments of African Americans who have helped to shape the moral and cultural ethos of our great nation, and to inspire hope amid the African American struggle for racial and social injustice in the land that we also call home. As you have taken divisive action to address some of these challenges with respect to policies that your administration has supported, like Opportunity Zones, the First Step Act, or substantial financial support for historically Black colleges and universities, the plight for equality and fairness for African Americans in our nation has significant work yet to accomplish. Perhaps the most glaring example of this is the unfinished work that must be done to repair the gross injustices within our criminal justice system and the need for significant reform. Ebony and Jet has highlighted many of these injustices throughout the years, whether it was the publication of 14-year-old Emmett Till, whose open casket was published in 1955, or the footage in Ebony and Jet publications of police brutality perpetuated against nonviolent protesters during the civil rights movement, or our specific publication for the need for bail and prison reforms in 1971. Today, the reality of mass incarceration and its adverse effects on African Americans and our families has grown exponentially worse, as there are more African American men in particular who are incarcerated in our nation's jails than were slaves in the 1800s. Subsequently, the Ebony Foundation remains committed by exclusively dedicating its mission to address the sustained injustices within our nation's criminal justice system. Currently, we are engaged in partnership with the Bail Project in a national bail reform initiative, Home by the Holiday, to combat mass incarceration by bailing out nonviolent citizens who remain jailed simply because they cannot afford cash bail as they await trial. We commend your administration for the First Step Act, which has already released thousands of men and women who were unfairly sentenced for their crimes. And yet, there are so many others who remain unjustly incarcerated for sentences that simply do not match the crimes for which they were convicted. The Ebony Foundation and its stakeholders and community and religious leaders from across the United States specifically, respectfully, ask that you join our cause for justice by taking another step to bring greater attention to the injustice of those matters by your consideration to grant clemency to former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. Mr. Kilpatrick was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison for his crimes. We attempt not to dispute his guilt or innocence, but rather to express our opposition to the excessive nature and length of his sentence. Kwame Kilpatrick's punishment of a 28-year sentence does not fit the crime for which he was convicted. Kwame Kilpatrick made grave errors in judgment as mayor. However, when looking at his sentence in comparison to other public officials in public corruption cases who were convicted and sentenced around the same time, you see the unfairness of Mr. Kilpatrick's sentence. Former Governor Blagojevich sentenced to 14 years. Former Governor Bob McDonnell sentenced to 2 years. Former Congressman William Jefferson sentenced to 13 years. All of these men are currently home either via the appeals process or because of commutation. Hence, we are seeking similar consideration and leniency in commuting the excessive sentencing of Mr. Kilpatrick's 28-year sentence for these nonviolent public corruption crimes. Kwame Kilpatrick has been incarcerated in federal prison for the last 7 years. He is not a danger to society, and there is absolutely no chance of him reoffending. In fact, we are confident that his passion and commitment can be utilized working in the community. He has been punished, and regrettably his children and family have suffered greatly as well. For these reasons, we respectfully ask that you favorably grant Kwame Kilpatrick clemency as outlined in his application number 199974. Thank you in advance for your thoughtful consideration. Sincerely, Reverend Keon S. Payton, National Director, Community Outreach and Engagement, the Ebony Foundation, and then they list about 4 pages of ministers who signed on to this, and one of these is one of our local ministers, Brian K. Brown of the Southern Florida Progressive Baptist Convention. I know Brian personally. And so, like I say, there's about 4 or 5 pages of ministers, Baptist organizations, and the like that, are signing on in agreement with Kwame Kilpatrick being released. Now, of course, if this is true, people are already saying that if Donald Trump did in fact grant clemency to Kilpatrick, it is solely to get the black vote. And my thing is, who cares? Because that's what the Democrats do. They pander to black people to get the black vote. They try to instill us with fear. They create, they don't create news, but they utilize topics in the news that impact black people to build their campaign strategies around. Make no mistake, about the whole Ahmaud Arbery case. Trust and believe the Democrats are using that to their advantage, to instill fear and everything into the black community. So as far as Democrat, Republican goes, when it comes to getting the black vote, it is no bars hold, and no one is any better than the other one. So now that letter was on their website, the Home for the Holidays website. However, there is nothing on the website about Kwame Kilpatrick actually being granted clemency. And so this news story that has come out has it came from the Twitter page of someone named Charlie Langton, and he posted a screenshot of what was supposed to be a news release, and it says Ebony Foundation, contact Sandra Nayland, info@ebonyjet.org, and it says Ebony-led coalition celebrates early release for former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. Atlanta, Georgia, May 22nd, 2020. Kwame Kilpatrick, former Detroit mayor, has been granted early release after spending 7 years of a 28-year sentence. Kilpatrick, convicted in 2013 of perjury, obstruction of justice, and other crimes, was not expected to be paroled until 2037. So I did a search on Google, and so the only people that are actually covering this is local Detroit media outlets, and they're basically saying that they have been unable to confirm that the story is true. They say that they have reached out to the Department of Justice, and no one has gotten back to them, that they don't know, where this is coming from. Let me see. So on CBS Detroit, it says, former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick reportedly granted early release. CBS Detroit, former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick has been reportedly granted an early release after spending 7 years of a 28-year sentence, according to a press release from the Ebony Foundation. Kilpatrick was convicted of perjury, obstruction. I've said that already. He completed 7 years of a 28 sentence. It says that the press release stated in March, Ebony, in coordination with the National Baptist Convention of America, the NAACP, National Business League, and a coalition of over 30 black megachurches, called for Kilpatrick's early release. In February, Michigan State Representative Sherry Gay Diagnogo led the charge by delivering a letter to President Donald Trump from Detroit. Leaders seeking clemency for Kilpatrick. Millionaire businessman Peter Carmanos lobbied for a Kilpatrick pardon from Trump, while current Detroit Mayor Mike Dugan also expressed support. The coalition's plea referenced the president's recent pardons and commutations and the extremity of Kilpatrick's sentence. According to the release, last month it was reported that a fellow inmate of Kilpatrick's died on April 25th after testing positive for the coronavirus. Patrick Jones, 49, was serving a 27-year sentence for a drug-related crime when he became ill at the federal prison in Oakdale, Louisiana. Kilpatrick was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison for his crimes, and while there has been a lot of debate about his guilt or innocence, we were arguing neither. Rather, we were opposing the excessive nature and length of his sentence. Kwame Kilpatrick's punishment of 28-year sentence did not fit the crime, says Reverend Keon S. Payton, National Director, Community Outreach, and I read all of that in the letter. And so here is more to the press release. It talks about in March, that they sent the letter. The coalition's plea referenced the president's recent pardons. Kilpatrick's sentence 28 years, so they're pretty much repeating a lot what was in this letter. It says many have lent their voice in support of Kilpatrick's request for clemency, including Angela Stanton, former founder of the American King Foundation, who was recently granted a pardon from President Trump. One of the reasons I'm running for Congress is because I understand the importance of restoration and justice. Kwame has served over 7 years in a cage, being separated from his family for nonviolent charges. He's just like those at the border, deserves to be reunited and given a second chance. Pastor Jamal Bryant had this to say regarding Kilpatrick. This is welcome news for my friend and his family. I'm certain that Kwame will take advantage of this opportunity to make a positive contribution to society and fulfill his immense potential to do great and to do good and make a difference. We prayed and God answered. The Ebony Foundation, the national nonprofit arm of Ebony Capital Partners, LLC, has partnered with the Bail Project to launch Home by the Holidays, an initiative designed to combat mass incarceration and reunite families. Through this campaign, forces will be joined to raise funds for the bailouts and to drive awareness about the urgent need for bail reform and the human impact of the cash bail system on communities of colors. And then it goes on to talk about the foundation, and that was the end of the press release. So it doesn't seem that there's too much news about, I guess, until the Justice Department announces it, we really won't know. Fox 2 in Detroit said former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick was imprisoned in 2013, has been granted an early release from prison. A report from the Ebony Foundation says, in a release published by the group on Friday, the foundation announced in March ahead, and then it basically says the same thing as the Detroit News article had stated. And there was one other news outlet that basically said they were unable to verify. Maybe it was Click on Detroit. But anyway, if it is true and Kwame has been released, I think it's a great thing. 28 years was excessive. And not only was it excessive, but we also know that Bogdanovich has been released. And then all of the people that have gone to prison under Trump have all had their sentences either reduced or commuted to home confinement because of COVID-19. So why shouldn't Kwame get out? You guys, let me know what you think. I will follow up if it, either way, if we finally get confirmation or if they say that it's not true. I don't know. I'm hoping that it is true. So that's it for me, guys. Leave your comments below, rate the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.